Well, everyone, it's that time again. Paul's in to join us. Paul, we've got plenty to talk about. The world of darts has gone mad in the last few weeks since we last sat down. First of all, we've got to touch on it, the tragic loss of a sporting maverick and icon, Eric Bristow.
Yeah, these things in every sport are inevitable, unfortunately, and this just came way out of the blue. Obviously, Eric was at the Liverpool Premier League that night, and that turned out to be his last night in our midst, which was tragic and very shocking at the time because he didn't have a long-standing illness, he didn't look unwell, he just had a really bad day, and it turned out to be his last day. But unfortunately, there's going to be no more memorable days with Eric, but he left a lot of memorable days behind him, and we won't forget that.
No, definitely not. You touched on it there. It was at Liverpool, so we'll start there as it's fitting. First game on, Simon Whitlock against Price. A bit of a damp squid because obviously Gerwin had already left us by then in the league table. Just didn't show up, did he? You could see he was there just to make the numbers up because he had to be.
Yeah, it wasn't a good game.
No.
I remember actually watching this game thinking, these guys are feeling the pressure because they need to perform, or they just haven't got anything left in the tank. And ultimately, Simon had enough, but as we've seen from Gerwin Price since then, he's actually picked his game up, but I think he couldn't wait to get out of there.
Agreed.
It wasn't a good match, and ultimately both guys will look back at that game and say, it's one to forget. But valuable points for Simon, and he's not out of it yet.
Definitely. Then we had a whitewash, Michael Smith battering Barney. Again, Barney didn't turn up at all. We had the head shaking again. It was just like, oh, here we go.
Well, you could see two things happening in that match. One, obviously the head shaking from Barney, thinking, what's just happened. But what I like is the genuine joy on the face of Michael Smith, because he doesn't give a lot away, Michael Smith. We know how talented the boy is, but sometimes, even when he wins matches, he slumps up off stage and you think, well, did you actually enjoy that? Well, when he did that to Barney, you could see that he genuinely enjoyed it. And when he smiles that broadly, it just goes to show that he doesn't just get up there and do a professional job, but he enjoys his exploits too. And what a performance from Bully Boy. I was buoyed for the guy. No,
definitely. Then we had Ando against Cross. Really good game, which Cross nicked.
Yes, I didn't really expect that to happen. For me, it had draw written all over it, but those guys, when they play each other, they've got so much ability bottled up in one big jar, and that when you take the lid off, if it spurs out, it's just something absolutely extraordinary. I feel that when those two play each other in a long format game, we could be in for something ridiculous. That night it was Rob's, but Anderson ultimately, I'm sure he'll get his own back.
No, definitely. Then again, we had Mensah against MVG. Even though Mensah was out, Mensah actually played really well. I thought he was there for the right reasons.
Yeah, Mensah Suljovic is not the kind of person who plays any dart match half-hearted. He made Van Gerwen work, and when Van Gerwen is made to work, he tends to turn up rather well. Again, just like Price, obviously, Mensah Suljovic being relegated has shown some form since then, so he's picked himself up really, really well. But ultimately, Michael did a very good job that night when he needed to, because this Premier League is by no way a sure thing for anybody. It's going to go to the wire in lots of different ways. A lot of people would probably say that it can be seen as black and white, but I don't look at it like that. I think there's a lot can happen still.
Last game on, a very emotional game between Peter Wright and Daryl Gurney. Obviously the news broke about the loss of Eric, and you could see Peter Wright just in absolute bits on the stage in front of us.
I can't imagine what it's like for someone to grace a stage like that, especially Liverpool, which is one of the best Premier Leagues, and have that ringing around your head. I mean, I was working for the radio that night, and we found out mid-match, and it was hard enough for me to articulate what was going on, never mind play a game of darts. There have been other things in the past where people have been told tragic news when they've come off the stage, but after the match has ended. I remember when Colin Osborne lost his dad, and he'd just played Mervyn King on the stage in Dublin, and he was unapproachable. Imagine if he'd found out just before that match even started. Things like that have happened. It was really hard for the guys, but ultimately a very good draw for both guys. It was a great point for Peter Wright, but it can't have been easy for both players at that point.
Again, that wrapped up Liverpool. From there we went to Sheffield. 10 became 8 officially then, so that was all done and dusted. First game on was RVB against Daryl Gurney, and Daryl Gurney was superb.
That was probably the best performance of Daryl Gurney's Premier League. He showed real spirit and a great desire to beat Raymond. And these guys spend a lot of time with each other. They live in each other's pockets for the best part of 3 or 4 months. And they can get very, very friendly. But ultimately, you've got to get on that stage, and especially on the nights when you play twice, you've got to think, you know what, tonight is going to be a real corner turner for me. When Gurney graced that stage against Barneveld, there was only one winner after the first leg. Gurney showed spirit, he showed passion, and he crippled Barneveld in that darts match early. And he made Barney just, he didn't have any answers. And it's one of the reasons why Gurney is still pushing for the 4.
You said about being friendly. This next one, these two certainly aren't friends. We had the Scottish derby, Ando against Peter Wright, and Anderson just had an absolute number on Peter Wright.
Yeah, great performance from Gary. I think sometimes he looks at Peter and thinks, you know, I know how to beat you. And when you have that knowledge on someone, that little wood on somebody, as we call in sport, it's such a massive advantage. It's like, almost like having the 4th dart, really, which we referenced to Mensa Sudovic in Austria recently. But Gary has these certain rivals over the last few years who, when he switches on against them, it's almost like he's already beaten them before the dart has been thrown. He had that with Phil Taylor a few years ago. He was one of the only people in the world that could beat him. He loves playing against Michael, and Peter Wright is that other one who he says, you know what, tonight, no lazy darts, I'm going to get this first dart in the 60, and what a performance from Gary. It was just absolutely delightful.
Then Michael van Gerwen did an absolute number on Simon Whitlock, 7-1, bang, thank you, all done in 15 minutes or wherever it was.
I don't know many people who had Simon winning many legs in that match, if any. You've got to give Simon credit for actually, you know, getting something on the board, because Michael van Gerwen in that game just looked like he was on a mission to do something extraordinary, and he played extraordinary darts that night. Who's going to deny him at the top of the league? You put him up against Simon, who's had a decent Premier League, but unfortunately the amount of tinkering that Simon's done with flights and with stems against a very solid Van Gerwen who doesn't change anything, then there was only going to be one winner on that match, and it proved to be Michael.
Again, a pivotal game in the race for the O2. Rob Cross beating Michael Smith 7-5 in a real good game.
That rivalry is not going to end for a long time. We've already seen a classic from him at the World Championships. It's a game we'll probably never forget. But that game has actually started something that I think we're going to be talking about for the next few seasons. It seems like Rob Cross knows how to beat Michael Smith in a tight match. He's done it again. And Michael Smith looks genuinely frustrated when he's in that position with Rob Cross. So he's got to try and get over that hurdle now. It could be a mental thing for Michael, but those two, going out the next few seasons, can't wait to watch it. Rob Cross was just a tiny bit better that night.
From the Worlds, those missed darts at double still grind Michael Smith, don't they?
Yes, they do. They do. Small misses like that can stick in your mind for season upon season. And it does seem to me that when that position he was confronted with again, it seems like he was in the same mental space, and you could see him knocking his head like that when he lost that match. It was the same scenario.
Last game on, Peter Wright picked himself off and did a number on Barney. After being demoralised against Ando, he did a real good professional job to get back.
Well, that game was probably the most interesting of the night for me, because not only did we see a rather characteristic equipment change from Peter, he went to these very small kite-shaped flights, and he was getting the darts to land very flat. He had an eye-opening 132 checkout in that particular match. Barney looked tired, he looked uninterested, and it was an infuriating thing to watch. It really was, because when this is your second game in the night, I know it's difficult, and I can't even pretend to know how difficult it is to play against a great opponent, and obviously playing your second match of the night. But you've got to show some willingness, and even Barney would admit that he didn't have anything in the locker at that point in time. And Peter Wright, with a setup that didn't work earlier in the night, he still managed to beat a 5-time world champion with it later in the night. And it was just a bamboozling entertainment, 25 minutes. Peter played okay. I think he still averaged about 95, 96.
Right now, yeah.
But to Peter, that's not good enough. He knows that. That's why he went to a different setup when he went to the European Tour straight after. But great points for Peter, but worrying night for Barney. didn't pick up anything, and ultimately that's going to cost him a place in the top 4.
No, my favourite week of the whole Premier League, the double header in Rotterdam, darts on Tuesday and Wednesday, was just an absolute showcase.
Well, what more can you say about Rotterdam? I'm a big advocate for the orange on the Wednesday, and then maybe another colour from the flag on the Thursday. They didn't do it, they just kept with the orange, but it was an amazing atmosphere. They've carved out something that is going to continue for many, many years. And Raymond van Barneveld, I think he understands how lucky he is to have that kind of support in his home country, because not everybody gets that in their home country. They supported Michael van Gerwen, but they didn't support him to the level of what Raymond got. And it just goes to show, when Raymond has that support, what he can produce. He produced 2 nights of darts that were absolutely delightful.
First game on though, Gary Anderson stole the show, beating Michael Smith 110 average, or but a few points, 110 average, and what a marker he set out early on in that game. Over
the course of the 2 nights, he said, right, I have a target, and I'm going to get that target. And that first game on that Wednesday night, he said, right, I've got to lay down this marker, because if I have a bad game here, it's going to feed into the next 2 games that I play. What a performance. It may have been arguably the best performance of the whole Premier League. It was destructive. And his first start average in that match was over 40. Ridiculous. It was actually close to 45. He was just so unbelievable on scoring. There was no way he wasn't going to win that match.
Well, it set it up, because he then went and avenged the Rob Cross defeat from a few weeks beforehand. Again, absolutely smashing him off the board.
Yeah, and it takes a special player to do that, because Rob Cross has found his feet in the Premier League. I think Gary understood that he has found that, his feet in the Premier League. So he knew that on that Wednesday night, it was, 3's all right, but if I get 4 points here, I'll be there.
Especially because Cross beat Daryl Gurney in the night as well. So Cross was in great form going into that game as well.
That was a great match. The Cross Gurney game was brilliant. And we talk about, a lot of, the bets with Unibet of, most 180s. I don't think we've had too many 180s in this Premier League. I think, obviously, with no Chisnell, the 180 count's probably going to go down a bit. But the thing about Gurney and Anderson and Cross, when they find real comfort on the hockey, they can score 180s blindfolded. And we've seen that with Gurney at certain points when he feels comfortable and he doesn't even aim for them. But it's just amazing how many 180s we could potentially see in the last few weeks.
Shock of the night, Peter Wright doing the unthinkable and derailing the green machine in Rotterdam. Michael averaged 106 and lost. Remarkable.
Well, let me ask you, did you expect Peter Wright to beat him?
No.
Well, I don't think anybody did.
I thought he'd be lucky if he got 3 legs.
Yeah.
That was my initial thought.
I mean, to think that Peter was the only person to beat Michael up to that point. He's at the bottom of the table, pretty much. And to then go into his backyard and have the audacity to go and beat Michael again and get only, the only second defeat of Michael's season. I think it was just borderline ridiculous. I mean, we've talked to players in these couches about, one of the reasons why dart players don't bet on darts. It's not just because they're not allowed to. It's because it's almost impossible sometimes. You look at the world number 1, the massive favourite for the Premier League, someone who's in his backyard, and he couldn't beat Peter Wright. But Peter's performance was very much similar to the one in Cardiff from earlier this season. Same result, and Peter Wright was just too good. And he loved that victory.
It's big darts at big times as well on that, because Van Gogh beat him in the averages, but again, just pin doubles at crucial times.
Yeah, averages don't mean anything if you don't get the win. Michael understands that. Michael likes to come out and say that he's not a robot, and one of the reasons why he's not a robot is because sometimes he gets reminded that he is a human being. And that Wednesday night in Rotterdam proved that he is a human being. A very good one at that, but Peter Wright was too good, and he's found a way to beat Michael van Gerwen twice this season in the Premier League, and it shows that even when he's having bad times, he's got spirit to beat anybody in the world.
And again, Simon Whitlock, unfortunately, had to play Raymond on the first night. Again, there was a foregone conclusion for me. The 12th man and
12th man, fourth dart, second rugby ball. You can say whatever you want, but the reception he got was amazing, like it has been before. But Simon understood the concept that he was going to be public enemy number 1. He gave spirit and he didn't celebrate the legs that he won, but ultimately Barney showed up. Yeah. If he'd have done that the previous week and maybe had a little bit more support from another crowd, we could be talking about Barneveld for the top 4. But it's that one night where he lost twice. It's going to cost him. That's
the frustration about Barney, though. All the ability in the world, and we see it on these rare occasions. We don't see it enough for me.
Yeah, and we can, talk about excuses or ways or why it's not happening. Has struggled with health issues. He's come out and said in many interviews that he's doing a lot of gym work. Well, surely the gym work is for the night where you play twice, because you've got to expel that extra bit of endurance. But it just goes to show when he is comfortable and when he's motivated, like he was in Rotterdam, he can do anything.
Second night, one of the best performances of the tournament was Michael Smith beating Simon Whitlock for me, off being hammered by his mentor. To bounce back to beat Simon 7-1 was an unbelievable result, and I think that's the result that made him believe he's going to the O2.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think they touched on that on the TV coverage as well, and the radio coverage. We all asked him, do you think that you've done enough now? And he says, probably not, but that makes me believe that I've got enough points in the bag now to put myself in the position to get there. He's a totally different player to the first time he was in the Premier League. Totally different. It's all about getting a start and running with momentum. And there are people who don't believe in momentum. I know Rod Studd from Sky is not a big believer in it. He tweets about it all the time. But for me, momentum has been proven by Michael Smith this year. That performance was sensational. And he hasn't even been feeling very well the last few weeks, Michael Smith. He's been suffering with something. But in that spell, he was delightful. And I've mentioned that word a few times, but that's the only way to put it. He just gets on that roll sometimes. That first start goes in, and he doesn't miss.
Anderson capped off the best performance over the 2 nights by beating Darryl Gurney 7-3. And I loved his interview afterwards. Yeah, there's life in the old dog yet.
God, he's just so blasé, isn't he, Gary? I mean,
love it.
I love Gary's attitude, but deep down in that Scottish heart of his, it's almost black, because he wants to beat everybody, and when he gets in the real mood to beat someone, and let's face it, he needed to be in that mood with Gurney, because him and Gurney served at a 180 fiesta, and Gurney was in one of those moods where he wasn't aiming his third dart because he didn't need to. He was in control of every dart he was throwing. That may be one of the best performances that Gurney's put in the Premier League this year, and it wasn't good enough. But Gary's just got that World Championship mentality of getting over the line when he needs to. That performance from him over the 2 days, and particularly that game against Gurney where he solidified the amount of points he got, it just goes to show why he's in the top 4. After being denied points earlier in the season, where he could have got wins, he only got draws, and sometimes he was edged out. But no, Gary was amazing those 2 days.
From there, we had a thrilling draw, I have to say. Rob Cross against Peter Wright. I didn't see that coming either. Again, I know Wright played well the night before, but I didn't know if he could back it up again.
I didn't think he would.
I didn't either.
I surveyed the results and I thought, he beat Michael in Cardiff, and after that things started to just break down a little bit, and I thought against someone of Rob Cross's consistency, I thought maybe, after the Lord Mayor show, I know it's one of the favourite sayings, I thought maybe he would stutter, but it was a strange game for me. But ultimately, I don't think it was a bad result for either guy, and sometimes it just happens that way. But Rob Cross has almost become a bit of a draw specialist at this point in the season. But is that point going to hurt Rob Cross? No. Has it hurt Peter Wright? Absolutely, because his top 4 chances are no more. Then
the game of the night, arguably game of the tournament if you're a Barney fan. The 2 Dutch darting juggernauts went head to head, and again, Barney beat MVG. He beat him with his third dart. That match was all about Barney's third dart. He had massive misses on doubles, but he didn't miss in the visit. So he's missed double 16, he's missed double 8, and neither of them were close. But then he switched to double 4, and he pinged it right in the middle. And I thought, you know what? He's going to beat him tonight. And I think it was about 2 or 3 legs in. I thought, I don't think Michael can win this game. I just felt that Barney was always going to have that one chance left, and he just cleaned up. And it's almost like Barney grows about 2 or 3 inches when he beats Michael. But he noticed there were no big celebrations from Raymond as well. I thought that was quite respectful. Yeah. He could have easily given it large. He could have said, I'm the kingpin of Dutch darts. But he didn't do that. And I thought that was very, very kind of Raymond to do that. Has it kept these hopes alive of making the O2?
not really convinced about that. But it really hurt Van Gerwen, that result and the previous one. And it was probably a blessing for Michael that he didn't go to Graz after, just to be able to catch his breath.
Massive. We've said it before though, if Barney can get in front and lead, he's a danger to anyone, and that proved it again in Rotterdam.
If you perform a darting autopsy on all of the wins that Raymond has over players like Phill or Van Gerwen, particularly Van Gerwen though, he's found a formula to beat him. And every time he gets the first couple of legs or he gets in front somehow and just manages to keep him at arm's length, if Barney goes behind, he loses. But every time he wins, especially in Premier League, because it's such a short format, if he can manage to get that small lead to start with, he can keep it. And he's got the kahunas to be able to pick those double fours and those double eights off when he needs to, and he's only got one dart left. And I think that showed a lot of spirit, which is a complete contrast to the previous week. Last
game on, Daryl Gurney bounced back and did an absolute number on Simon Whitlock, 7-1, and it could have been 7-0 if we're being honest.
It could have been, and possibly should have been. You know, they played an amazing game earlier in the season, and there was a lot of gesticulation, there was a bit of aggression. I thought, you know, this is like the Grand Prix final #2 was brilliant, but this one was different. Gurney was just a different animal. He saw something in the defeat to Anderson of himself. And he's took that backstage and said, you know what, I didn't play bad there. I just came up against an Anderson who was on destructive form. But what I'll do now is I'll take this second chance and I will go forward and I will destroy Simon Whitlock. He did exactly that. And the confidence from Gurney after that win, he exuded it. And he still believes. What a 180 hitter he is. And how destructive he is on doubles and big finishes. When he just seems to believe that he can do it. He's almost very similar to Gary Anderson was a few years ago when people were saying that he didn't hit doubles very well. Gurney believes that he can score. He believes he can score better than anybody. And that's a confident statement when you've got the likes of Chisnell and Anderson and Van Gerwen. If he gets that kind of confidence on his doubles, he will have more majors in his future. And that's what he's got to work on.
From Rotterdam, we went to Manchester, and it didn't disappoint. Manchester, night of drama everywhere we looked. First game on, Michael Smith against Peter Wright, and this was interesting to me. The mindset of Michael Smith, he played twice, but he didn't, because this was all or nothing in his first game. Yeah. Everything went into this game, and he did an absolute number on Peter Wright.
Yeah, I think Michael Smith likes playing first. I think he likes knowing that exactly when he's going to go on, and he's not alone. I think a lot of dart players are like that, but that was almost like a home game for Michael Smith. It's not far from where he lives. I think because he hadn't been feeling well, he appreciated the fact that he didn't have to travel very far, because this time of the year it's Premier League, it's Euro Tour, it's Pro Tour, it's possible World Series as well. But that was a great performance, and very much like the previous week where he just came out of the blocks. We're starting to see more of that from Michael Smith now, and he genuinely believes he can not just beat people but take them to school. And when you're doing that to Peter Wright, who's had a half decent patch, especially making 2 European Tour finals, it just goes to show where Michael Smith's games are. He's in the mood to destroy people right now, and I think he may have been getting something in his ear from Anderson, saying, stop letting these guys off, will you? When you get the opportunity, take them out. And he seems to be doing that a lot more now. Again,
Daryl Gurney against MVG. Beforehand, we all looked at it and went, this could be special, and it didn't disappoint.
No. I'm a big believer in Gurney against Van Gerwen. I think back to a European Tour event in Hildesheim where Gurney beat Van Gerwen, and Gurney had half a broken hand, so he beat him mentally. When Gurney's fit and full of belief and confidence, there's no reason why he can't beat anybody. As far as I'm concerned, I've got a little bit of doubt as to whether Van Gerwen's going to get the job done this year. That may be slightly controversial. I love Mike to bits, but I think people are getting closer to him. And Gurney is one of those guys. And the more we see games like this, the more it proves my point. Barneveld beats him. Peter Wright beats him. Gurney getting close.
4 Premier League games in a row, Van Gerwen didn't win. Averaging over 100 in all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd ever thought that before a dart was thrown.
Well, the standard does keep rising. I was talking to a statistician about the last time Van Gerwen lost 4 games in a row. It was actually 6. It was something like 6-7 years ago. So we're not used to it. This is not so much a seismic shift in the power of darts, because Michael van Gerwen will probably be world number 1 for the next 5 or 6 years, guaranteed. But there will be spells. He's not a robot. You will find spells where people get close to him, and he will have stutters. But it just goes to show how people are not afraid of him, much like people started to not be afraid of Phil Taylor. When he had his dominant period, people started to learn how to beat him or get closer to him, and Gurney's one of those guys.
Moment of the match for me was the 1-5-6 finish with Michael sat on tops, and it was to break back as well.
You need moments like that against players like Van Gerwen, against the likes of Taylor, against the likes of Barneveld, the greats of the game. You've got to be able to ping those shots when they're sat on double, and you've got to have the belief that you can do it before you've even thrown your first dart. If you can, it's that kind of shot that gives you confidence in further campaigns. And it's just more proof that Gurney has got what he needs in the locker.
Next one was a huge shock for me. Simon Whitlock beating Gary Anderson off the back of a great Rotterdam, and somehow he managed to win 7-5 when, hands up, I didn't see it coming.
No, this one was basically like an axe in the back. I didn't see that coming at all. If I was a betting man, I would have put quite a lot of money on Gary Anderson to win that match. And even Gary was surprised. I mean, the photograph that circulated on social media was up to say, "How dare you do that to me?" Yeah, I don't even think Gary would have expected that. You know, Gary has diligently prepared for all of the Premier Leagues this year, and maybe he just had an off night. But ultimately, you've got to give Whitlock a load of credit. He has tinkered a lot, but he found a formula that night to get one over on Gary Anderson. It's not an easy thing to do.
Next game on, Rob Cross and Barney shared out a 6-all draw. Barney now needs Cara Vorderman's help to reach the playoffs. I think mathematically it can just about be done, but I don't know what the equation is.
He's going to need Rachel Riley too.
Yeah.
But you know, it may be over for Barneveld, but it's not over for Rob Cross. He seems to be getting the odd draw now. He's almost bookending the season, a bit like Daryl Gurney started it, getting 1 pointers. It's better than nothing, but is the confidence of Rob Cross a little bit shaken by the fact he's not getting those wins? But if you look at it a different way, he's rescuing situations that he could lose. He's getting himself 6-5 down, and he's putting in a mammoth leg to get that point that could ultimately put him in a slightly different bracket to someone in the finals, because he's going to make it. And it's just been a really impressive display of mental fortitude from Rob Cross this season, because he's been put in the corner a few times. He's been up to it. He's come out swinging and flashing the pan, apparently, at the beginning of the season. Yeah, give me a break.
Last game on, Michael Smith against MVG. It wasn't 5 in a row. Michael Smith looked like he had nothing left, and I know he tweeted afterwards that he didn't, because that seriousness on the walk-on wasn't there. He was laughing and joking with the crowd, and you could see that he just couldn't hit those levels again. He tried, probably over-tried, but MVG just too good in the end. Yeah,
I mean, 2 Premier League games in one night for Michael Smith. It doesn't hold very good memories. When he first joined the Premier League, obviously someone wasn't very well, and then he was told, well, you're going to have to play twice tonight. I mean, that's a baptism of fire if ever I've seen it. But this time around, at least he got 1 win, but you could see that, you know, maybe from feeling a little bit under the weather and the exertion of getting that big win earlier in the night, ultimately 2 points in one night, not bad. He probably would have taken it. He put everything into that first match, but when you're severely wounded or under the weather, you can't afford to give Van Gerwen anything. And he ran with a little bit of weakness from Smith, and he got a massive win.